Hi everyone, welcome back to the Acsom Bulletin. It's Tuesday afternoon. We're here after a 6-1 demolition at the weekend. Lawrence, it was much back to our usual selves at the weekend. Really top performance, top result. We're obviously back in action tomorrow night. Domestic action, which has not been since the end of August, I think, that we've played midweek domestically against Motherwell at Firth Park. We'll talk a wee bit about that game and we'll digress and have a wee look at Saturday's fixture against Hibs. Just as I say that, we're joined by Liam out in Japan. Liam, good evening. I think it's that right.
Yep, sorry I'm a wee bit late, lads. Had to brush off my sash before I came on, you know.
No worries at all. No worries at all.
Borrow it from Celtic State.
Something like that.
So it's a triple trio for us, a trio obviously that James Forrest got at the weekend. I'm sure everybody who tunes in on a Tuesday will know that myself and Lawrence are absolutely delighted with that, and we will get on to it because we've been two people that have tried to remain very balanced and have championed James Forrest on Acsom, I think, ever since I've been on, certainly Lawrence as well. Lawrence is just waiting for James McGarvey to score a worldie, and that'll be it complete. But let's kick off with Saturday's 6-1 hammering, lads. Obviously, down the bottom, we've got Frank McGarvey, Celtic legend, and we're going to speak a wee bit about Cameron Carter-Vickers and Moritz Jentz's new defensive partnership. I'm sure yesterday, if you're paying attention to Celtic's social media or whatnot, you'd have seen a wee clip of Frank speaking to Jerry McCulloch at the club. Obviously, Frank was in the park, and Saturday he's going through a really tough spell at this point in time. We had said last week that everyone's thoughts at Acsom are with Frank and all his family at this time. Frank's been a great friend to the podcast and has featured on Acsom previously, just recently in our charity weekender last year. So all our thoughts, prayers and strength are with Frank at this time. A man who was at Celtic for 5 years, scored 113 goals in 245 appearances, 2 leagues, 2 Scottish Cups, 1 League Cups, lived the dream. And even just kind of close to my heart, 7 years ago he auctioned off his 1985 Scottish Cup winning jersey. I know you're a bit of a kit guy like myself, Liam. He auctioned off his 1985 original Scottish Cup jersey for the Maryhill Food Bank. So it just kind of tells you the quality of the man of Frank McGarvey. And I know, Lawrence, yourself, you've spent a lot of time with him, with Kevin, because a lot of times I've actually been in Kevin's shop. Frank's been there, and I'm sure you've got to know him pretty well through Kevin and in the penalty spot.
Yeah, absolutely cracking guy. Loves Celtic. He's always got time to speak to everybody, Frank, isn't he? Paul Jones, manager from Fitba Greats, sponsor.
Yeah, the Celtic Greats manager. Yep.
Yeah, he was he's just a brilliant guy, Frank, in that video. You know, tears watching it. But
Well, tell you, I don't know Frank personally, but my dad certainly does, because they actually played together as schoolboys. My dad's the same age as Frank McGarvey, and they both played for St Catherine's Boys Guild back in the late 60s, and they also briefly played together at St Roch's as well in the early formative stages of Frank McGarvey's career. He went on to Celtic. My dad went on to the dizzying heights of Nuneaton Borough and Torquay United. So slightly divergent paths there, you know.
Well, listen, he's played with him. I think there'll probably be a lot of people that sit around about that school football team that either played against Frank or played with Frank. So there's plenty of stories out there. I think he's always been in that kind of same mould of all those Celtic legends from the 60s, 70s. He's been an accessible character to people in and around the club, which is, speaks volumes of his quality, and he's a true Celtic legend. Lawrence, Celtic legend. I think, I've certainly been one who has called James Forrest a Celtic legend in the past. I know someone maybe describe him as a Celtic great, but when you start to look at the numbers and the company is starting to keep, I know Paul Jones said it yesterday with Colin in the show, it's very hard not to put him in this category, because he's currently sitting at 451 appearances, 49 off his number, 500, joining only 13 people to do that. And he's only one of 30 men in the club's history to score 100 goals. So I think it's pretty hard not to put him in this bracket now, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I can't see a reason why you wouldn't. I'd be amazed, for somebody to explain why he's not, with the career he's had with us. we were talking about starting him. We thought we might have started him in Europe. The last couple of sort of appearances had looked good, and
Yeah, you mentioned that last week. Yep.
Yeah, he starts, and yeah, it was brilliant. I think the ref was having nightmares about midweek and was determined to stop another 7-1. But yeah, James, he was just fantastic, wasn't he? Back to what we know he can do, and we've probably missed out that experience in the team a bit. So yeah, I think that jersey's should be his this week, shouldn't it?
Yeah, no reason why not, especially after scoring a hat-trick. Liam, just looking at Forrest's performance last week against Leipzig, he obviously came off the bench, and something the manager had spoken about recently was, we've got a big squad, but not everybody's really up to speed at this point in time. And I know Lawrence had given me that shout last week. My concern was, if you throw him into a game like this, his experience is great, but he's just not, at that level in terms of, sharpness at a game. But he came on against Leipzig. He was probably one of the brightest sparks in the game, and then at the weekend he does his talk with his 3 goals.
See, what I would say to countenance that argument about, is he up to speed? Such is his experience in his decade plus at Celtic and his European experience that an old head that knows what it's doing is as useful, if not more so, than someone who's fully up to speed in terms of fitness in European level. But James Forrest would, I imagine, be by far the most European experienced player in our squad, apart from maybe Joe Hart. But I think he's his qualities and having that experience over, how can I say it? It compensates for any perceived lack of sharpness he might have from not being a regular starter. And he's clearly a guy who obviously works intensively on his fitness, because he came in on Saturday and was, just completely blew the opposition away. So it shows you he can still do that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think the Hibs fullback probably was still having nightmares. And it was good to see him return to that natural right-hand side. That was something that Colin touched on yesterday a lot last season under Ange Postecoglou. We seen him coming off the left, but we know that his position, some wingers can do it, some don't. James Forrest is certainly a right winger, and that's where he should remain. But Lawrence, I think what Liam says, there's a lot in that in terms of, Forrest being experienced, an old head. Something that's maybe been directed at this Celtic team in the Champions League so far is maybe getting a bit of stage fright. I know the manager's spoken about that the players being pretty inexperienced at this level. Majority are. And, but when James Forrest came onto the park last week, I've spoken about him being a bright spark, but he's been there, done it, and he's not going to get stage fright. And I think there's a lot in what Liam says there about bringing an old head like that into the team, and it does compensate maybe for that lack of match sharpness or fitness, because he's been there, done it. And it's really, really important, I think, at this point in time that you have someone like that in the dressing room when Callum McGregor's not there.
Yeah, definitely. What's more, bemoaning not taking our chances. James has definitely shown him how to do that. But he what was it, off the bench against Motherwell, a 4-0 win he scored in his debut, and he's just scored every season since. It gives the boys, Abada's numbers are frightening, but he's a bit hot and cold. James is just a model professional for these boys to look up to. If they look at the career he's had. We've probably seen the video of Beaton and Rogic, doing the rounds talking about their time at the club. And the young players have got to look to James, I think. If I can achieve even half of what he's achieved when he's at the club, we'll be doing well. But over 100 goals, or we'll soon be over 100 assists. Will he make the 500 club? Well, probably. He's got 2.5 years left in his contract, I think.
Yeah, 2025, summer 2025.
Yeah, I think he'll make the 500 club then.
Yeah, especially I find it kind of miraculous, Liam, that he keeps just kind of, anytime anybody writes him off, he just bounces back and he appears again. And last season, I think I've touched on that he had big moments last season when Celtic really needed him. I think back to that League Cup semi-final against St Johnstone, coming off the bench to score. That Livingston game, it had been a venue that had haunted us. It was 2-1, and he sealed the deal. He had his moments last season, which was obviously enough for Ange Postecoglou to say, I'm keeping you in and around the place. And I think that experience was something that obviously fed into that with Tom Rogic and near Beaton, as Lawrence touches on there, going out the door. Because when you're doing a rebuild, it's very easy to forget that we're only really a year and a bit into this. what was deemed the rebuild. You need experience in there. Joe Hart came in with that experience. We retained Callum McGregor, and as I've said, Roger and Beaton departed, and that's why it was important that James Forrest was kept in around the building.
I think it also speaks to Forrest's versatility and his willingness to listen and to learn as well. Because you just think of the number of different Celtic managers who have all had radically different approaches to how the game should be played. And James Forrest has scored goals under all of them. You know, Ronnie Dyler, Brendan Rodgers, Neil Lennon, now Ange. All very different managers with very different approaches to the game, but Forrest is equally effective with each of them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think speaks volumes of his consistency in training and everything else that comes with that. Probably playing his best football, I would say, under Brendan Rodgers. If you look back, I think it's season 17, 18, 18, 19. He hit 17, 18 goals. A really, really good return for a winger. But yeah, I was made up for him. I watched a video with Callum McGregor this morning, Lawrence, and he's talking. He said that he doesn't think anybody out there would have been as happy for him. You know, he's been his fellow academy graduate. He's basically grown up at Celtic with him. And it's just really, really important to have these kind of guys in and around the building.
Yeah. You know, you're touching on a fellow academy graduate, because we're talking kind of last week, you know, what we're going to do to get people in the team. Forrest is just, you know, living proof that, you know, it's worth having the academy. 14 seasons is it out on goal scoring winner. It's just phenomenal. Join the 500 club. But you begin to look through the squad and you're thinking, we've got Callum, Tony Ralston, I think's only convinced everybody's definitely part of the squad. You get Stephen Welsh on it, you know, that's getting game time. It's great to see the boys come all the way through and play. You know, that there's nothing better than one of your own making it. You know, maybe we all love the marquee signing. I don't know if we fly them in private jets or whatever newspaper headlines used to say about signings to Scotland, but I think it's better when it's kind of one of the boys that's come through and makes it. It's just somebody that is actually living the dream. You know, you get people that come to Celtic and say, you know, I now support the club, but knowing boys that, you know, I've done it, supported it all the way through. It's just been part of their life. You know, very much like Frank McGarvey, isn't it? You know, a boy that grew up supporting Celtic and he's loving the dream.
Yeah, and he's experienced his highs and lows as well. I mean, that video now that's doing the rooms, that, you know, I think if you probably bought it, Liam, would cost you an arm and a leg in postage to get through the post. But from Tannadice, when you know the manager's talking about highs and lows, the players who had been there the season previous experienced that time. He's came through that, and again returned Celtic to champions. So yeah, I know what you mean by that, Lawrence. I think it's important that you do have supporters in the dressing room. You know, I've top clubs in Europe. I've did that around the place, Spanish, Italian clubs and whatnot. And it's important that Celtic continue to do that. Liam, I want to bring in a comment from Beach Boys. Don't know if it's Brian Wilson tuning in or maybe possibly Mike Love, but we'll bring it in here to say, old Ted, just 31, hardly kicked a ball in 2 years. Probably got another good 2 years in him. But let's not get carried away. Over past few years, he has been inconsistent and no one wanted him starting. But what would you say to that, Liam? Because he certainly has been inconsistent, probably through no fault of his own. He's had injury issues and whatnot. But I still think there probably is more to come from James Forrest.
As a guy who, in all seriousness, takes medication for depression, I'm quite glad that guy who just made that comment isn't my therapist. That kind of negativity is a wee bit uncalled for, I think. Not kicked a ball in 2 years is a bit harsh. We've just outlined how he has scored goals at important times, even when he hasn't been playing regularly. And that is why I believe that no matter what Celtic do in the next couple of years, James Forrest is and will remain a very important member of the squad. He is not a guy who will, like, as the comment there just says, I think that's spot on. He's an excellent addition to the squad, and he will always have the chance to have an impact, be it as a starter as he was at the weekend, or as a sub as he was against Leipzig. He has a combination of skills, experience, and that little bit of magic that is sometimes missing from Celtic. Sometimes, especially in the last few weeks or so, there's been a couple of games where we've looked very flat and we've needed that wee spark of inspiration just to get us over the finish line. And Forrest is a guy who can, I think, even a couple of years from now, will still have it in his locker to come on and produce that for you if you need it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's a really good point there from Strachan's laptop, who I know usually contributes on a Tuesday. We don't think it is Gavin because he's usually at Lennoxtown taking the training at this time. But if he is, he's doing a good job either way. But, you know, on that, he can still do a job as a squad player and an important sub, and he's here for the next 3 years. Just to give us a mention, well, especially Euro and Liam, Nakamura announced his retirement, 44 years of age. So Edward Y of Oz thinks that Forrest still at least a good 13 years in him. So that might haunt some Celtic fans. I'm probably sure it will, but you know, don't get too worried about it. I don't know if James Forrest will get to that level of consistency, but that's a phenomenal return, isn't it, Lawrence? Because I remember when I was young, just starting to go to Celtic games, you know, Nakamura's kind of a guy who's my era, and I think that he's still playing just now is quite incredible.
Yeah, really, really fit player. You know, obviously putting the work in. And his free kicks best in the world. You know, he just knew he was going to score sometimes. Like down at Kelly, you know, we've been struggling to break them down, needing the win to win the league, and that free kick from out the right into the bottom left, just keepers no chance. Goal against Rangers, and when we played them in the middle of the park for a change, I thought we should have played them there more often rather than out in the wing. But how far out is that in the movement on the ball? It's got to be up there with the top goals in that game. You know, from Caldwell into him, takes the touch, and then what a strike! Yeah, brilliant Nakamura, wasn't he? You know, and I think, you know, Strachan obviously signed him with Peter Law, and I think the club done really well off the merchandising in the Far East. I'm sure Liam will be able to tell us more about that.
Not as well as we should have, and let's leave it at that. Celtic did not and are still not in any way, shape or form coming close to monetising the Japanese contingent as they should. It's very, very, very frustrating that the only way I can buy a Celtic shirt is to order directly from the store, which is in Scotland, wait 3 weeks for it to get here, and then pay about the same price of the shirt again in import charges. You know, the club really should be finding ways around that.
You'd think they'd have a shop there. I mean, I remember Nakamura, they changed the main stand. I think it was triple the size of the press room at the time. Moved the press room into a much bigger area because the amount of Japanese journalists were over. And so after that, Koki Mizuno didn't quite work out with it.
He never really got a chance, did he? I mean, it's unfortunate, but I mean, I saw him play a couple of times for Jeff United over here, and he looked brilliant. But never quite made it at Celtic, unfortunately.
I think his first 2 games had a couple of flashes, and then, as you say, never got a chance. But yeah, you think Celtic would, I don't know, Tokyo, open a shop, why not?
I'm just about to say that. If anybody's listening, Tokyo, especially for Liam, get a shop set up.
Just for Liam.
If
you're not Liam, you're not coming in.
And I'm sure there would be others will follow. But it was quite interesting. That leads into his, you know, talking about another Celtic winger in Dyson Maeda. It was interesting.
Oh, is it frozen on us? Oh.
Still here.
Oh, you're still here. Right.
Talking about Nakamura, and he was talking about him setting the pathway for the likes of Dyson Maeda and his other fellow countrymen to go to Japan. I don't know if the comments were on the back of his retirement, but Maeda, I think that goal at the weekend will do him the world of good. I know we're talking about James Forrest and we're kind of digressing a wee bit off here, but I think that goal will do him the world of good because he just doesn't look like a guy who is going to be helped by 60,000 people on his back, which was the case last Tuesday evening against RB Leipzig.
Yeah, I think that's an unfortunate trend, not just with Celtic, but with modern football in general. A lot of fans who, let's face it, if you're under 25, 30 years old, the idea of Celtic going any more than about 18 months without winning a trophy is just completely alien to you, right? So there's a whole generation of fans who are just not equipped to handle Celtic getting beat. That's just it's an unfortunate reality of success. And the thing is that people at Maeda I mean, I've seen it with him. I remember back when I first started going to Celtic in the early 2000s, Jackie McNamara was the whipping boy of choice. Down the years, there's been other players who have come in for it. James Forrest is one who used to get it and still does from time to time as well. And I really wish we could stop doing it. By all means, critique a player's performance after the game. When you're having your post-match pint, just say, look, I think that guy was crap today and here's why, right? Or, this player isn't cutting it, But at the game, during the time that the player is on the pitch, that the player is within earshot of you, do you really think effing and blinding at him and telling him how useless he is in any way going to help him get any better? As if he's going to say, right, big man, sorry, and then he's going to suddenly score a 40-yarder. No. Right? It's not going to happen. So just back the team,
Back the team. But, Lawrence, would you agree with that as well with Dyson? I thought the manager's comments, especially after last Tuesday, were kind of welcome, because I could start to feel that intenseness in the stadium. Anytime Dyson was getting the ball, it was starting to build a wee bit. And the managers came out after the game saying, I'm going to persist with him, and he knows himself that things need to improve in his game. But I certainly think that goal will help him, and I wouldn't really be surprised to see him start tomorrow night, possibly at Fir Park.
Listen, I'm kind of with Liam in this one. I don't think the manager should ever had to be put in position. He's got to come out and back him with players getting on him, or on a player's back, or supporters getting on a player's back. We all talk about the magical atmosphere Celtic fans create in the Champions League and how it drives players onto a better performance, and how we're the 12th man. So it's going to have a negative effect if we're booing him or we're on top of him. You think, Jack Henry goes away to, he was good at Dundee, comes down, a couple of mistakes, fans right on top of him, and then he's shipped off to Belgium and seems to be a fairly decent player there. So I think, as Liam said, you're not going to achieve much with barracking a Celtic player or booing him. I've never booed a Celtic player kind of on or off the park, outside the stadium or inside. But, I know for some people it can maybe be a bit of a cathartic experience going to football and getting rid of frustrations, but I don't think that's the right way to do it. I don't think we're going to build our players up. And if we talk about developing youth, young players coming into the team maybe that don't have a lot of confidence, not necessarily obviously Dyson, but some of the boys we bring through, maybe Stephen Welsh, if people start getting on his back, how do you think, that affects him? And it's something that I don't think puts the sports in a good light, serves as well. Some players come through it. Look at Greg Taylor, he's come through it, and maybe he's all the stronger for it. You could argue that, players that come through that have got great mental resilience, but should they have to? Could we not give them more support when they're on the park and help them develop, or make their development easier for them? Do anything we can to help them make it a club.
Liam, there's a comment came in here from Brown Warrior, who usually comments on a Tuesday. I think there might be actually something. He's saying that wingers at Celtic, sorry to cut you off down the bottom of the screen there, have always tended to get it tougher due to the fact they're expected to produce some magic, beat their man, and are also positioned closest to the fans. Positionally, they have to be tougher. Do you think there's something in that the Celtic level, and it kind of bases off probably Jimmy Johnson throughout the whole years of Celtic, that there's an expectation for a Celtic winger to always produce a bit of magic, and maybe as the game's probably moved on a wee bit, the role of a winger isn't always to do that. James Forrest probably been the prime example of that.
Yeah, I mean, when I think back on it, a lot of the players that I've seen come in for stick down the years have been wingers. James Forrest, Scott Sinclair, Paul Telfer back in the day, Steve Guppy. Even Jackie McNamara was a wing back, but he was a wide player. So, I think there is definitely some mileage in that wingers do have it tougher, but I don't necessarily agree that they have to toughen up. I think instead the fans need to grow up a wee bit, and it's quite it's quite two-faced when, you know, for example, you think back to, and I don't want to get negative here, but you think about, for example, Neil Lennon, right? Neil Lennon's mental health issues were well documented. He had depression, he had bipolar disorder. Well, he still has them because depression is a lifetime battle. It's not something that ever goes away completely. But, you know, everybody was like, back Neil Lennon, support him, you know, all this rubbish about he brings it on himself, it's complete nonsense, you know. Everybody rallied behind him, as they should. But a lot of those same people are now openly abusing the likes of Daisen Maeda and not stopping to think, are we possibly mentally damaging him by saying that? You know? It's like, you can't back one person and say it's terrible the abuse he gets, but then you go out and dish the same abuse out to somebody else. That's just that's two-faced as far as I'm concerned.
There's a comment coming in here from Gary Melrose, who is talking about 67 Ale Hale, Hamish's channel over there, and Scott McDonald's a regular contributor on it, Lawrence, and Scott was saying it on the channel that it can really affect players when they're already low in confidence to get that kind of atmosphere towards them. So I'm really hoping that Daisen does kick on. And, you know, I'm sure he has the full faith in the manager because he knows all about him. He had him at Yokohama, you know, and really, you know, we've only seen Daisen Maeda at Celtic come in off the back of a full season and really hit his peak after that point in time in a Celtic jersey. And maybe he's just one of these players that it takes a while to get up to speed and then, you know, gives you all out. But, you know, I would agree with both of you in the sense that it's not going to help him any way, shape or form if he's just going to, you know, be pounced on, and I really hope he does kick on in this next run of games before the World Cup.
I said, I mean, I don't think his performance has been terrible. Actually, I think he made he's still, you know, he tries every game. He puts in an amazing amount of work on that pitch. Some things haven't come off him. You know, he's now found the back of the net. You know, the weekend maybe that'll kick him on. But sometimes I think people, you know, whatever's going on, they like to be able to get frustrations out, and I don't think this is the right way to do it. By not abusing the Celtic players, abuse the refs or something. You know, God knows they're bad enough. It's you know, Bernabei busting through. What was that free kick for? Has anyone ever seen a free kick like that? Your wing back beats two guys, busts into the box.
Well, I mean, the sad thing is, Lawrence, I have seen free kicks like that all too often, usually given to Rangers.
It's just astounding. You know, maybe it's getting in. Saying VAR wouldn't even have helped you there, would it? It's just that. It's just maybe it's a word that begins with C to describe it. I don't know.
No.
It was just terrible. But you know, Bernabei's now got a couple of some more minutes under his belt. He's settling in well. He's looking, you know, a really decent attacking option there. You know, Greg Taylor's got a bit of competition now.
We will get on to Alexander Bernabei because I think he's worth touching on again. So I don't cut you off at the bottom of the screen, Liam. Ryan Kelly's coming in the comments to say, glad Maeda got a goal to help his confidence. His work rate you couldn't question. He believes it was mainly his finishing in front of goal, in particular in Europe, which probably got him more criticism. And that links in with one of our comments here from David Bradley, who believes that Forrest is a better finisher than Daisen Maeda. But, you know, again, much like what Ange Postecoglou's been talking about this Celtic side, especially in European football, it's inexperienced. Maeda, it's very easy to forget. He's only 24. You know, there's still probably a lot more to come from him in a Celtic jersey, and he's very likely to go off to the World Cup and play for his national team. And for his sake, probably be hoping to put in good performances for his national team.
Well, the national team's a good point because that's one of the biggest arguments I use in defence of Maeda, is that, you know, now again, I'm not meaning as a criticism of Kyogo, right? Kyogo has scored a couple more goals than Maeda has this season, but I think they've both been guilty of passing up a lot of chances in terms of, like, you know, goal scoring opportunities, and I think they've both not hit anything like the form they were in last season. So I do think it's a wee bit disingenuous that Kyogo continues to get a free pass, whereas Maeda is getting all the stick. And I think they're both needing to step up their game a wee bit.
Liam, would you say that Hajime Moriyasu is probably more likely to pick Maeda over Kyogo going into this World Cup? I noticed that he played Maeda.
Yep.
I know he was experimenting a wee bit in that first game, but he played him up top. Do you think, from the manager's perspective, I know people hit back, well, what does Moriyasu know about football? He's not picking Hatate, but from his perspective, he's likely to favour Maeda over Kyogo more?
Yep. That's my. That was going to. You've just kind of stolen my thunder there. That was going to be my main point. Moriyasu consistently picks Maeda ahead of Kyogo to start for Japan. So clearly, there is a player in there, and there's a player that Moriyasu recognises that maybe we, as of yet, don't. Because the Japanese approach to the game is heavily based on the team. It's not about who scores the most goals. It's not about who's the man in the match. It's about winning the game and playing as a team. And with Maeda's work rate and Maeda's defensive qualities in terms of tracking back, he is a more useful player to a Japanese manager than Kyogo is, despite the fact that Kyogo is a more naturally gifted footballer. Being a naturally gifted footballer is not as high a priority in Japan as it is in Scotland, amongst fans and amongst managers. And at the end of the day, they've been to the last 6 World Cups and we've not been to any of them. So I think maybe the Japanese might have a point on this one.
Yeah, no, I think they probably do. And Lubo Maestro there in the comments, Maeda will come good, fantastic attitude. I absolutely agree with that.
Yep.
And I think
Spot
there's still
on.
much more to come from him. It's easy to forget he only arrived in January, half a season after playing a full season in Japan. I know some people thought maybe after a full pre-season under working under Ange Postecoglou, we'd have a completely different player, but you know, he might just be one of those players that it takes a wee while to get up to speed. There's a lot of football to play, which again, you know, this season is like no other. With where the World Cup is, the Champions League games, you would have that 2-week break. I don't think that's something that's helped Celtic. I don't think that's helped something players in the squad and an inexperienced team that's not played at that level before. So, you know, looking forward to it. I really hope that by the time possibly next season rolls around, and Daisa Maeda's still very much a Celtic player, and hopefully Celtic's back in the Champions League, we start to see his real potential, and you might even see that at the World Cup within a month's time. It's a tough group. Who is it? Spain, Costa Rica,
and
is it
Germany?
Yeah.
But the thing is, Germany are a team in transition. You know, when you saw them play against England last month, they looked dangerous, but they also looked very vulnerable. They're beatable. Costa Rica are probably beatable as well. Spain will probably end up topping that group, but I think Japan just might sneak through in second place.
Interesting. Is that the new away top behind you there? Or is that
it is, yeah.
That's
the new away top with the origami pattern on the sleeves. Yeah, just picked that up last week.
Nice one. I like the home top. I think I might treat myself to one of the nice new home jerseys, although it is blue. But I'm just need to. I bought a Japan top before, so I think
it
Japan's
was quite
be
funny that actually seeing on the day that there was a Glasgow derby, Celtic decided to launch this red, white and blue Japan top on the website. That was quite a interesting timing for Celtic's marketing department.
Yeah, well, I'm sure that sales are probably going all right, but Japan probably going to be my World Cup pick, Liam, because Scotland aren't there again. But while we're talking, Lawrence, about forward players, Sead Haksabanovic is really starting to, you know, get the attention I think he deserves. We see his versatility from playing Champions League as what you would describe as a number 10. You see him playing the left-hand side at the weekend. You know, I think when you look at him and Jota and the combined money that we've spent in both of them, Celtic have got themselves absolute bargains in both players, and Haksabanovic is going to be a top performer at Celtic.
Yeah, I mean, Tosh and the rest of the scouting department's obviously doing an outstanding job at the moment. He's just fitted in seamlessly, fits Ange's style of play. Maybe a lot is to do that. Ange will sign players that fit his style of play. You know, it seems a simple thing to say, but
something Celtic's not always been good at, though.
We've seen loads of managers just grab players because they're available, and Ange seems to bring them in once he's kind of sussed out where they're going to fit and make sure they fit his style of play. And you boys are talking about Japan at the World Cup. Angel will have some time off to do some scouting, won't he? It'll be, and he's got to be looking at, I would think, centre half and a striker, because we were talking about missing chances. I thought it was the right time to start Yakimakis at the weekend, but I think we can maybe do another striker just now. Haksabanovic has looked good, he's versatile, but I don't think he's an outright striker, is he?
Nah.
Yeah.
But where do you think he's been better, Lawrence, than what you've seen? And again, it probably you've not been able to see maybe his best potential in midfield because he's not got Callum McGregor in there beside him. Say that again.
The game in number 10, we played number 10, really liked that. But I think he's looked great there. But, we're not seeing too much of him. I think he's only just getting up to speed now. Up to the speed of demands of playing in an Ange team.
Liam, it was surprising when he threw him in for that Shakhtar game. I know he'd featured off the bench up in Dingwall, and then we saw him thrown in for that game. Correct me if I'm wrong, I think actually might have came on in the Derby game as well, the 4-0 victory, or it was Madrid game. It was one of the two he came off the bench. Definitely came on against Real Madrid. But I certainly agree with Lawrence. I think he is getting up to speed now when you're starting to see a player who's got bags and bags of potential and quality. And, he was one like Oliver Abelgard who have not yet seen too much of. Didn't really have a proper pre-season. He's starting to get up to speed now, and he looks a player. But where do you think he's best suited from what you've seen of him so far, Liam? Do you prefer him in that number 10, or do you prefer him out in the wing?
I prefer him as the number 10 because I do think that in terms of wide options, Abada, Jota and Maeda are all better wide players. But Haksabanovic can play out there. So I think he's one of those guys that you it's more about where can you fit him into the team rather than where is he best, because put him anywhere on the pitch and he'll do a great job, I think. It's a good thing actually, just to kind of expand it a wee bit. If you look at Celtic's recruitment pattern since Ange came in, finally the penny has dropped that by and large we cannot afford to bring in players from the likes of England and in Western European leagues. Carter Vickers is an exception to the rule, obviously, because we got him from Spurs, as we did Joe Hart. But you look at the Japanese players. We've raided the Russian league a few times now for players. We are looking at, Asia and Eastern Europe are two markets that haven't been milked dry by the big European leagues yet. And that is where we can get ahead of the game there and get these players, because there are players there as talented as anything you'll find in Spain, Portugal, Italy or Germany, but you'll get them for about a tenth of the price. But if they perform at the same level in Europe in the fullness of time, then you'll be able to command the same, 7-figure sums for them.
It's one that's interesting. I think another market that Celtic might be looking at more now. I know there's a few comments coming in here, so we'll get these up. He's a guy that Lawrence has already touched on. Is Alexandro Bernabe? This comment coming in here to say how good were Haksabanovic and Bernabe on the left-hand side. And another one from Raymond Haddon coming in to say thought Bernabe and Haksabanovic were immense up the left-hand side on Saturday. That's potentially a market, Liam, just to kind of throw that one back to South America, that Celtic's not shopped in at all, but we've seen Bernabe come over, much like Haksabanovic. It's taken him a bit of time to get up to probably the level that Ange Postecoglou expects of him, but he's starting to put in really top performances now.
Yeah, I mean, we're not going to be in a position to go in and sign players from like River Plate or Boca Juniors, but we can, beyond that, we can look at the Argentinian league, the Uruguayan league, the Brazilian league. I
remember Malmo with the amount of Paraguay players that they had in that Champions League team that beat us in the Champions League too. Yeah.
There's definitely something to be said for, if you're going to recruit all of these players from foreign markets, getting a group of them, as we have with the Japanese, I think is a great idea, because it helps the players to bed in, and it'll serve the national team well in the fullness of time as well, because they are more likely to get picked if they're in a winning team. So that's attractive to players as well. I mean, there's been a few different rumours floating about in the last few weeks of various Japanese players being linked with Celtic. And I think it's because they see, well, that's the club that Japanese players can go to if they want a shot at the Champions League and they want to make a name for themselves and they want to get into the national team. Because for all Rio Hatate had a great season at Kawasaki Frontale, player of the year in my opinion. He didn't break into the full Japan squad until he was at Celtic. That's the reality of it.
And he's still, unfortunately, not really getting that breakthrough completely. But yeah, I think there's a lot in that as well. Ange Postecoglou's recently been talking about Scotland as a whole, that the league with the amount of Aussies that are now coming over here has been a good stepping stone. So it's not even just from a Celtic potential. I think at this point in time, Liam, other countries that are looking at, and other players from different nationalities are looking at Scotland as a place that they can go and develop, and then possibly get that other move. And for Japanese players or whoever, Celtic is a good place to showcase himself and play at the top level of European football. So I think that's great, and long may it continue. Lawrence, just when we're talking about Bernabei in this one, here's one. He was playing as an inverted fullback at the times at the weekend, but Bernabei does like to bomb down that left-hand side, and it's been something that I think Georgios Giacomakis has certainly liked. We've seen both of them link up really well. Do you think that's been maybe something that's potentially been missing in Greg Taylor's game? Because just really not been in his remit to do, but we've seen Taylor become a complete expert at playing the inverted role, but he's maybe not did this as much.
Greg Taylor's a converting midfielder, central midfielder, and Bernabei's a converted left winger. Go figure, one of them looks better charging up the left wing than another. So yeah, but he looks quicker than Greg. So I'm going to be impressed if he puts the kind of numbers in over a season that Greg's managed, in terms of his assist in general play. But yeah, it's always exciting to see a Celtic player beat someone, no matter what way that is. But yeah, it brought a wee bit of freshness, I thought, there. Taylor's played an awful lot of football. There's not been many challengers to him. I know some people thought Liam Scales was maybe in there last season, but I never thought he was anyone in danger of putting Greg out of the team. I think it was just injury that kept Greg out for a bit. Yeah, Bernabei's, he's going to give him some competition, but we've seen a level of consistency from Greg Taylor that we've not, as of yet, seen from Alexandre Bernabei, which I think is really important, especially for Ange Postecoglou. But it is good now that you've got that rotation that you're talking about, Lawrence, here, that last season Taylor was a complete stick-on to play left back. You're looking and going, well, Bernabei is 21? Only Argentina with our side, so it's maybe a bit of bedding in period into the country for him as well. He had a bit of, shall we say, trouble as well during his bedding in period, but yeah, he's now he's getting minutes. He's looking good. Cracking crosser at the ball. If he only can learn how to beat players without fouling them, that's the next thing. To bring in another wee comment here, Jamie Young saying that he thought Haksabanovic, Bernabei and Giacomakis linked up brilliantly. I would agree with that. David Ferguson coming in here to say Bernabei's still the player he was in his YouTube reels. We know that those can be deceiving because Vasilis Barkas looked like an absolute steal at £5 million on YouTube, not to be. And Albin Ayeti looked like the next best thing after sliced bread. But hey-ho, YouTube can be quite deceiving. Liam, you've spoken there about some Japanese players transitioning over to Scotland, bedding in, Hatate then getting that chance in the national team, which probably brings this guy into the conversation, and that's Yusuke Ideguchi. Back in the bench at the weekend, he's had a troubled start to his Celtic career with injuries. Urban culture, usual Tuesday contributor coming in. Will we see Gucci on Wednesday? But what is your whole thoughts on this situation that Ideguchi finds himself in?
I mean, to be honest, Gucci was the one signing that Celtic made that kind of surprised me because his team had a kind of indifferent season last year. Maeda came in as the joint top goal scorer, and Hatate was, as I say, in my opinion, in the opinion of many journalists in Japan, the J League Player of the Year last year. So they were both signed on merit. Gucci was one that kind of came out of left field because nobody really expected him to go to Celtic. After it didn't work out for him at Leeds, and then he had a brief period on loan at, I think it was Graufer Fürth in Germany. It didn't really work out there either. There are questions of, is this a guy who just didn't really cut it in Europe? And Celtic is kind of his last chance to really prove that he can cut it in Europe. So this is his make or break season, and I really do hope he gets some time on Wednesday, and I hope he does something just to show us what, I mean, as Maeda showed at the weekend, one goal can make a huge difference, And Gucci is not the type that even needs a goal. He just needs a good, solid performance in midfield, and that could just kick him on and get him going. Because Callum McGregor being out means that we are perhaps only one or two more injuries away from having to pitch in Gucci in a starting place. So he needs to be ready to go.
Lawrence, what's your thoughts on this one? Because obviously Abelgard arrived in late in the window, and James McGarvey at this point in time looks as if he's well ahead of Yusuke Deguchi. So where do you see him fitting in at this point in time? Because McCarthy's not did anything wrong to merit not getting that chance off the bench or whatnot. We see O'Reilly playing in that pivot role now. Callum McGregor been out the team. I'm sure Ange Postecoglou will rotate. Probably tomorrow night's the best chance he's going to have a rotating the squad. Do you see Yusuke Deguchi getting a chance during this period of time? Because surely if he is going to get a chance, this is going to be the time while Callum McGregor's out.
Well, I think it'd take maybe another couple of injuries before Gucci was getting the number 6 shot in front of somebody. You've touched on, you get McCarthy, Abelgard, Moy can play there. We've seen O'Reilly play there. Scott Robertson's been making Champions League squad. That's probably to do with homegrown, but if he's in the squad,
Adeguchi wasn't included in the Champions League squad.
So I don't know, is that 5 or 6 that were named? Just off the top of your head, it's probably ahead of Gucci. He's been unlucky with his injuries. I suppose it'll be down to Ange and what he sees in training, but on the face of it, you would think all of those were ahead of him. Gucci does have a future. He's got a few years left in his contract. He's going to need to do something this season, and I think he'll find his sell up for sale at the end of it. But it's just, I think it's a really tough ask to get in that position, that number 6 position at Celtic. But we've got so many options. I mean, we talked about this before the transfer window shut. I think you and Tash were saying, we need another number 6 in, and I was going, we've got so many. Yeah, I'd rather have a striker or a centre half. And yeah, so I think Gucci's just really unlucky that there's so many players ahead of him just now. Arguably Moy, McCarthy, they may move on at the end of the season. Who knows? They're getting on a bit. They've got 1-2 seasons at Celtic left at him, but Gucci, unless he does something spectacular to get into that team, I think this is probably going to be his last season at Celtic. We'll look to move him.
I would hope that Ange Postecoglou brought him in for a reason, and it's interesting what you're saying that they're laying with him being the one that you maybe didn't expect to make that move to Glasgow under Postecoglou, and we've seen him feature a couple of times. The game at Alloa, it's not his fault, and then he comes in, I think, in the last day of the season against Motherwell, if I remember right, came off the bench and featured. We saw him in pre-season a bit. But I would like him to take his chance and get into that team, because towards the end of that transfer window, the period of time that Lawrence is talking about, that was something that me and Natasha were saying. I was actually expecting James McCarthy to go at that point in time. I remember in the last year there was links to Sunderland and various other places, but he does look ahead of him. But just in terms of maybe what Lawrence said there about Aaron Moy, I much preferred him in a bit of a more advanced role at the weekend rather than playing the pivot, which I think was one of the issues at St Mirren. But with Aaron Moy, I think he's a much better player when he's got players have got a bit of energy around him.
Yeah, one of the great revelations of recent Celtic team selections has been the thing of O'Reilly dropping a bit deeper, and he's really...
What do you make of it?
I think he's doing well. My worry for him, though, is that that's going to affect his chances of getting into the Denmark squad, because, again, much like Celtic, Denmark have a plethora of very, very good players in that position already. So I don't see O'Reilly displacing the likes of Delaney anytime soon,
Yeah, no, absolutely. But, playing the pivot role, O'Reilly, I think he played very well there last week against RB Leipzig. But I think there will be rotation in and around it, and it's interesting that's what the managers kind of went for, is playing O'Reilly in that, deeper position, whatever you want to call it. I call it the pivot, in midfield.
It's perhaps something that Ange has picked up from his time in Japan. This was something I elaborated on last week on the show. The idea of versatility being a very, very strong consideration amongst Japanese managers and kind of Japanese football philosophy in general. So Ange maybe wants to have players prepared to step into the team in possibly 2 or 3 different positions depending on what the needs are. You see it with our attackers. Kyogo, Maeda, Jota, Abada, they can all play across the front in different roles as need be. In the midfield, you're seeing Moy playing both defensively and attacking, depending on how things are. O'Reilly, vice versa. We have with Bernabé, we have an attacking fullback. With Taylor, we have a more defensive option. And then on the other side, it's the same with Juranovic and Ralston. Ralston is a more physically imposing, more of an old style fullback, whereas Juranovic is more of your kind of attacking wing back type. So throughout the whole team, you have this versatility and this dynamic ability to shift. I mean, one of the main reasons why I think we gave Hibs such a doing at the weekend was because we fielded a team that was totally unlike anything they would have trained for. They would not have trained to face a front three of, Giacomakis and Haksabanovic and Forrest. They would not have factored into their calculations at all that was going to be the attack they were going to face. And it was clear from the offset they just didn't know how to handle it.
That's a really good point on that one, because you're probably expecting if Haksabanovic was playing to play in that midfield role that we've spoken about, James Forrest getting the throw in. I thought he merited a start after his performance against Leipzig, especially with Abada coming off. And then it was probably tossing a coin between Giacomakis and Kyogo after the Champions League midweek. But that's probably something that's right in Ange Postecoglou's favour just now, that you can, you've got so many options just now at this point in time. And Lawrence, I thought Aaron Moy was absolutely cracking at the weekend. I thought it was his best performance by far in a Celtic jersey. Would you agree with me that you prefer him in a wee bit more of an advanced role in midfield rather than playing the pivot?
Yeah, he's not looked. He's not a lot of minutes, but yeah, he looked better. I think maybe Saturday everybody was looking good. Just they were really in the mid, weren't they? He can definitely pick a pass, can't he?
Aye.
He can.
That's an understatement, I think.
Yeah. Should it be one to the left foot or one to the right foot? I can't remember. Is that Danny Fox? But it's. Listen, I think the team as a whole were really on it on Saturday. But yeah, he's looked better further forward. I think Liam's right about Ange wanting players that can play kind of various positions, because they're going to have to fill in during the game the amount of pressing we're doing. If we're getting pulled across, the players will need to know the different positions and how to play them. Certainly makes us harder to mark and pick up. But it's a joy to watch when it works. I still fancy, if we had an out-and-out striker, I think we'd score a parallel more goals. I don't think Giacomakis or Kyogo have really hit the heights this season so far.
I think they will, though. I think they will.
Well, I mean, listen, there's no doubt both score goals. I suppose it's the amount, and I think the Champions League this season is a case of what if, isn't it? If we had an experienced striker up there that maybe didn't go overawed, but
is that an experience level at Champions League level, or because both of them, I think Giacomakis has been Champions League level before, but much like the other players in the Celtic squad, which the manager's spoken about, as an experienced team at Champions League level.
No, definitely is. I mean, yeah, obviously touched on it before the last transfer. What window shot it was getting, getting an experienced striker in. Yeah, but yeah, I suppose you only get experience by playing it. But even then, as many goals as we've scored, I wouldn't think even in Scotland a percentage conversion is as high as it should be.
Liam, what's your take on that? Because I think maybe looking at a team like RB Leipzig and, you know, they're linked to Salzburg, which is a completely different thing in modern European football. You have a lot of players basically taking their scalps at Salzburg, if they do at all, in the Champions League, then they move on to Leipzig and have been there, kind of done it. I think for Celtic, you know, going back to last week, because we've not been on since then, a lot of them this season have unfortunately had to take those scalps in the competition to develop and get that bit of experience in the competition, which is just unfortunate that we're not able to probably bring in somebody who's Champions League ready at this point in time.
See, I'm gonna say something that might be unpopular here with our viewers and possibly with you guys as well, but I think there are some parallels to be drawn between Celtic in the Champions League this season and our City rivals in the Champions League this season for different reasons. Now, in the case of the Rangers Tribute Act, or whatever you want to call them, they are skint, right? They're skint. So their philosophy was get into the Champions League this season, take a doing, bank the money, and balance the books so that next season they can actually have a go at it, right? That's from what I'm reading, that is their approach, right? Our approach is, all right, first time back in the competition in 5 years, go out and have a go. Let's put on a show. But remember, we've got a young team. We've got an inexperienced team at European level. We've got the raw ability, but we don't quite have the street smarts yet to really make an impact in Europe. And I think that obviously we have given a far better account of ourselves in Europe than Rangers have this
We're
season.
trying to build on something and improve and mark down a style of football, I think, in Europe.
Aye. But as I say, in a certain way, both teams are in the same boat in that this is a transitional season for them in the European context. So I think that, you know, I don't see anybody taking 7 off us, so I think we're all right. But I think we need to just be mindful that we are still in transition. You know, if you speak, you speak to Jared from Celtic Down Under, who knows Ange better than anybody. He'll tell you that Ange's teams usually hit their peak after about 2 years. So we are still building towards the pinnacle of this team. And I still think we could hit double figures against somebody in the league this season. I do think that's still very possible.
Yeah, but by no means
12.
Well, maybe
now VAR's in.
Easily could have that day at Dundee United. And I think that was something that pleased myself. It probably pleased both you guys and all our listeners as we saw that ruthless streak back in the Celtic team that we hadn't really seen since the Derby game at the beginning of September. That, you know, that same streak we saw up at Tannadice, at Rugby Park, it was back. And, you know, there was comparisons. I watched an interview with the manager this morning. He's talking about, you know, there's comparisons to be drawn between going up the park at McDermott Park and getting a late goal and Dazimeda getting a goal at the weekend. It's all about the structure and the culture that exists at the football club at this point in time. That no matter what position you find yourself in, whether it's 1 each or 5-1, you're still looking to go up and score another goal, which I think is important. And it could have probably been more than 6-1, Lawrence, as you already rightly pointed out, if it wasn't for woeful refereeing. But this will be the last show that we're on before VAR is introduced to the league. So you never know. We might not need to spend time talking about woeful refereeing decisions, although from what Crawford Allen said, I'm not too hopeful about it all. He's spoken about it having a kind of teething process and not all decisions being right. So it's going to be interesting, gentlemen. Tomorrow night, just quickly in this one, it came up in the news is today. I know we're drawing near the end. Premier Sports is getting a bit of a rebrand, Lawrence. I don't know if you managed to see this. Via Play is taking over on the 1st of November. So just to read out this tweet, having received clearance from acquisition of Premier Sports, Via Play will launch in the UK on November 1st. Total package, including sport, so this probably goes out to anybody that's subscribing to Premier Sport at this point in time, will be £15 a month, which I think is an increase in a tenner or whatever it is just now. And Premier Sports 1 and 2 become Via Play Sports 1 and 2. Interesting whether this was at all on the SPFL's radar when we were doing this new deal with Sky Sports.
Yeah, it's just the TV deal. I don't think it serves anyone or any Celtic fan particularly well. You end up paying for Sky, BT, and Premier. You don't get all the games. It's another increase, another can afford quid. I'd much rather that they'd got a better deal, but at least explored selling the games. I know the current deal allows them to sell more, doesn't it, themselves? You thought after COVID season, the coverage was decent enough. Yeah, it wasn't Sky and BT level, but it was watchable. And surely they could have taken the plunge and went ahead and ran it as the SPFL TV and get to watch every game if you wanted. I don't know if you get to watch them all out there, Liam. Do you get Celtic TV International?
Yeah, I have Celtic TV, and I've also got a Japanese subscription service that shows whatever game is like your 12:30 kickoff in Scotland is the game that I'll get live. So, for example, this week it was Rangers Motherwell. That the following weekend it's going to be Hearts Celtic.
Just Motherwell. Yeah. Imagine VAR had been in for that game, eh? Dangerous last man challenge.
The thing is, the online conspiracy theories already coming in early. A Rangers supporting friend of mine is already referring it to as the Vatican affiliated referees committee.
That's a new one. That is a new one. Brian Lennon has reminded us one of our taglines there, CCV and Jenz. So just for our kind of last couple of minutes, just while we're here, gentlemen, I'll come to you in this, Liam. I think Jenz is starting to grow a lot better, as I think any centre half would, beside Cameron Carter-Vickers, although I still do think that when Carl Starfelt comes back in, he is likely to be the partner, but at this point in time, both look very solid together. And I was very impressed with Moritz Jenz at the weekend. He's very confident in taking the step out of defence and playing the positive pass forward.
I think it's going to be a difficult quandary for the next couple of months, because there's no doubt that Starfelt and Carter-Vickers are the best partnership, right? But the question is, how much of that is just like Carter-Vickers plus anybody is going to be a good partnership, right? I think we noticed that particularly when he was out the team for a few games.
Especially the game at St Mirren, which is when a lot of folk, what we were talking about earlier, Moritz Jenz got absolute pelters after that game at St Mirren.
Which I don't think was very fair, because again the whole team didn't turn up that day, and yet you single out one or two players. Him and Joe Hart both got it, and I couldn't understand that at all, to be honest. But I think that taking the players as individual players, I think, it's just my opinion, I think Jenz is a better player than Starfelt as an individual. But at the moment, Starfelt has a better partnership with Carter-Vickers. So that's your starting defensive pairing. Your top defensive pairing, assuming everybody's fit, is still Starfelt and Carter-Vickers. But in the fullness of time, with Jenz getting more game time with Carter-Vickers, he may well reach or surpass the level of Starfelt. So that's one to monitor, I think, as the season goes on.
It's an interesting one. Lawrence, what's your take on this just before we head off? Obviously, I think a lot of us are biased in it just due to the fact that we've seen Starfelt and Carter-Vickers play more often together, but Moritz Jenz is starting to really show his worth in a Celtic jersey.
I mean, you could bring it down to a right-sided centre half and a left-sided centre half play together better than two right-sided centre halves. It gives a better balance when Jenz plays. The ball moves quicker because he's left-footed. For me, if possible, I'd have a left-sided centre half and a right-sided centre half. That was our natural positions. Playing somewhere out of position, I always think you lose something. Is Starfelt going to be better out of position than Jenz is in position? I don't think so. Jenz looks a player. I know Granty had him down south. He coached him. Peter's, you've interviewed Peter, haven't you?
Yeah.
Years, so I'm sure he would have given Tosh the rundown on him. Big things were thought of him. He came as a season late by all accounts and were in for him earlier, so obviously somebody we've tracked for a while. Looks a player. well, not the tallest team. He's probably the tallest player in the team now, isn't he? Yeah. Well, if Abelgard ever gets in, maybe he'll take that mantle, but he's a threat in the opposition box. For me, yeah, I would go with Jenz and CCV over Jenz and Starfelt, just for a multitude of reasons. Not that Starfelt and Carol Kirkpatrick is it's not a bad partnership. I just think it's more natural to Jenz and CCV.
Yeah, interesting one whenever he returns, Carol Starfelt. They'll be pushing for competitions, as we've outlined, that we do have across the team at this point in time. Thanks, as always, to all our usual contributors in the comments section. I think voting is still open to vote for Acsom and Base video content down below. So if you are down there, like the video, subscribe, and get voting if you haven't already done so. Gents, pleasure as always to chat to you both on this Tuesday. Acsom will be back tomorrow, the usual bulletin, and we'll be on the match day coverage before the visit to First Park.
Just Paradise Promotions, Comrie, 5, Friday night, Big John Hartson, if you're up that way.
There you go. Still tickets available?
Still tickets available as far as I know.
There you go. If you are in Fife or in the surrounding areas, check that one out. Good shout from the big man there. Thanks as always, gents. Cheers for joining me. And